For years, I believed my husband's generosity was one of his finest qualities, until I discovered the woman he'd been sending money to. He called her his sister. But the day I met her, nothing in my marriage or my heart was ever the same. The day I stumbled across the bank transfers, I wasn't snooping. At least, that's what I told myself later when guilt gnawed at me. I had been sitting at the desk in our small home office, sorting through bills, trying to balance the checkbook Daniel never had patience for. The numbers stared back at me like strangers. Hundreds here, thousands there, each line neatly labeled with the same name. Claire. Not utilities, not mortgage, not savings. Just Claire. I remember the way my stomach tightened, the way my pulse hammered in my ears. Who was she? Why was he sending her money every month for years? Always the same amount, always on time like clockwork. And why had he never said her name to me? I was the kind of woman who liked predictability. Coffee with just enough cream to soften the bitterness. Grocery lists organized by aisle. Evenings curled on the couch beside Daniel, watching reruns of shows we could recite by heart. I wasn't boring, I told myself that often, but I loved the comfort of knowing where I stood. The ground beneath my feet was solid, safe. Until that day, staring at those bank statements, I realized the ground wasn't solid at all. It was cracked, and I'd been walking blind. Hey there, my dear family and friends. If you're already tuned in and ready to enjoy this story, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, because tomorrow I'll be bringing you another story just as captivating, and you definitely don't want to miss it. Daniel had always been harder to read. He carried silence the way some men carried pride, a shield he wore without apology. He was reliable, steady, the kind of husband friends envied. Always there when the car broke down, when the shelves needed fixing, when life demanded strength. But intimacy, that was harder for him. He deflected with humor, or with long hours at work, or with the kind of hugs that said I'm here but not I'm open. I loved him. God, I loved him. But I had long suspected there were rooms inside him he'd never let me enter. Now, with Claire staring up at me from the bank records, those closed doors suddenly felt darker, more dangerous. That night I couldn't eat. Daniel sat across from me, shoveling mashed potatoes onto his plate, chatting about his day at the hardware store. His voice casual and unbothered. I stared at him, fork heavy in my hand, wondering how many truths he'd managed to tuck behind that easy smile. Finally I asked, my voice too sharp, "Daniel, who's Claire?" The fork paused midway to his mouth. His jaw tightened just slightly, but enough. He set the fork down, wiped his mouth with a napkin and said too quickly, "My sister." My chest clenched. Sister. Since when? He shrugged, forcing a chuckle. It's complicated. Complicated. The word sat between us like poison. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but instead I nodded stiffly and pushed food around my plate. Because that was my flaw, I wanted peace. I avoided storms, even when storms were already tearing the roof off above me. But deep inside something cracked that night. Later, while Daniel showered, I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the steam seeping under the bathroom door. I thought of the man I married, the one who kissed my forehead every morning before leaving for work, the one who remembered to put gas in my car, the one who always smelled faintly of cedar and coffee. Was that man real? Or had I built him out of half-truths and hope? And somewhere out there, this sister, this Claire, she knew something I didn't. She had a part of him I'd never touched. The thought hollowed me. That night, Daniel climbed into bed beside me, his arm heavy across my waist, his breath warm against my neck. To anyone else we would have looked like the picture of marriage, safe, content, whole. But my eyes stayed open long into the night, the name Claire echoing in my mind like a secret knocking on the door of my life. And I knew, sooner or later, that door would swing wide open. What would you do if you discovered unexplained money transfers to someone your partner never told you about? Confront them immediately or wait until you had more proof? Share your thoughts in the comments. Happened a week later. Daniel had been distant since that dinner, working late, keeping conversations shallow. I tried to pretend things were normal, but every time I looked at him, the word Claire pulsed in my mind like a bruise I couldn't stop pressing. So when his phone buzzed on the counter one evening and the screen lit up with that name, I froze. My heart slammed against my ribs. My hands shook as I picked it up. For a moment, I told myself not to look. Respect his privacy. Be the bigger person. But then the phone buzzed again, another message appearing. I need to see you. Please. The decision wasn't mine anymore. Daniel came into the kitchen just as I was staring at the screen. His eyes went wide, his face drained of color. Give me the phone, he said, his voice low, tight. I clutched it to my chest. Who is she, Daniel? Really? I told you. No. My voice cracked, raw and jagged. No more lies. No more complicated. I want the truth. For the first time in years he looked afraid. Not angry, not annoyed, afraid. His lips parted, but before he could answer, the phone buzzed again in my hand. Another message. I can't do this alone anymore. Something in me broke. I'm going with you, I whispered. Wherever she is, whatever this is, I'm not staying in the dark another second. He hesitated, then finally nodded, his shoulders sagging in surrender. We drove in silence, the night heavy around us. Streetlights streaked across the windshield, slicing Daniel's face into fragments of shadow and light. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Where are we going? Yes. His voice was hoarse. She's staying in a motel outside town. The word motel landed in my stomach like a stone. My chest burned with the need to scream, to demand answers, but something told me the truth was waiting just ahead. When we pulled into the cracked asphalt lot, my breath caught. A flickering neon sign buzzed overhead. A single door at the far end opened slowly, and there she was. Claire. She wasn't what I expected. Not glamorous, not seductive, not the other woman I had tortured myself imagining. She was thin, pale, her hair messy, her clothes worn. Her eyes, God, her eyes were wide and haunted, rimmed with red as if she hadn't slept in days. She froze when she saw me step out of the car beside Daniel. You brought her, she whispered, her voice trembling. Daniel's voice was low, careful. She deserves to know, Claire. Her gaze darted to me, panic flashing. I didn't mean for this. Then mean it now, I snapped, my anger spilling through the cracks in my fear. Who are you? What are you to my husband? Her lips trembled. For a moment, she looked like a child cornered in the dark. Then, with a shuddering breath, she whispered the words that froze me where I stood. I'm his sister. Just, not the way you think. The night air pressed heavy around us, the hum of the neon sign the only sound. My mind reeled, trying to fit her words into some kind of sense. Daniel stepped forward, his voice shaking. She's telling the truth. His family. But not by blood. Claire's eyes filled with tears. He saved me. When no one else did. Her words cracked open something raw, something too big to hold. All the confusion, all the anger, all the fear I'd been burying surged up at once. Why didn't you tell me? I demanded, my voice breaking. Why let me live thinking? My throat closed around the rest. Daniel reached for me, but I stepped back. No more secrets. If she's your sister, then tell me why you've hidden her from me for years. Tell me why you've been sending her money in the dark like you're ashamed of her. Or of yourself. The motel light flickered, casting Claire's face in and out of shadow. She looked at Daniel, then at me, then lowered her head as if bracing for impact. The spark had ignited, and I knew nothing would ever be the same again. We didn't speak on the drive home. The silence was thick, suffocating, each of us drowning in our own thoughts. Daniel gripped the wheel so tightly I thought it might crack. My chest burned with questions I couldn't force out. Claire's haunted eyes stayed burned into my mind. By the time we pulled into the driveway, I felt hollow, emptied of everything except one truth. The story of my marriage was no longer just mine and Daniel's. Claire was part of it now. And I didn't know if that meant I had gained a truth, or lost everything? If you were in this wife's place, meeting the mysterious Claire for the first time, would her broken, fragile state make you more likely to believe her, or would you still assume betrayal? Share your thoughts in the comments. The morning after meeting Claire, I woke with the sour taste of unease in my mouth. The sun streamed through the curtains, golden and warm, but I felt cold inside. Daniel was already downstairs. I could hear the scrape of a chair, the faint clatter of a spoon in a mug. Life as usual, except nothing was usual anymore. I stayed in bed longer than I should have, staring at the ceiling, rehearsing questions I wasn't sure I wanted answers to. When I finally went down, Daniel sat at the table, coffee steaming, newspaper folded neatly beside him. He looked up as if he'd been waiting. "Morning," he said softly. I poured myself coffee, the silence between us sharp enough to cut. Finally I asked, "So she's your sister?" "But not really. Do you realize how insane that sounds to me?" He flinched. "I know how it looks. But it's complicated." I slammed the mug down, coffee sloshing. "Stop saying that word. Every time you say it, it's like you're putting a wall between us. I can't climb over it if you won't let me." His jaw tightened. He looked away. Some things aren't easy to explain. And there it was again, the silence, the resistance. Couldn't take it. I spent the day out, wandering aimlessly through shops, sipping a latte I barely tasted, scrolling my phone in a park until my fingers ached. Anything to avoid being in that house with questions rattling like chains in my head. Was I a fool to stay? To keep believing there was some noble explanation when all the evidence screamed betrayal? By the time I came home, exhaustion sat heavy on me. Daniel was on the couch, the TV flickering. He looked up, his eyes weary, but I brushed past him without a word and went upstairs. I wasn't ready to forgive. And I wasn't ready to leave. I was stuck in the cruel in-between. Downstairs, Daniel rubbed his hands over his face. He'd spent all day fighting the urge to call Claire, to check if she was okay. He'd promised himself he'd give his wife the time she needed. But the silence in the house gnawed at him. He felt like he was being punished for telling half the truth, yet terrified of what would happen if he told the whole of it. He thought of the nights hiding in the basement with Claire, of the promises he'd whispered to her in the dark. "I'll never leave you. I'll always protect you." How could he explain that without shattering the picture of the man his wife thought she married? So he resisted. He stayed silent. And the distance between us grew. At the motel, Claire sat curled on the bed, staring at the blank TV screen. Her phone lay on the nightstand, silent. She had texted Daniel once that morning. "Are you okay?" But when he didn't reply, she didn't try again. She knew she was the wedge between them, the shadow falling across their marriage. Guilt ate at her, but so did fear. She had no one else. Daniel was her anchor, her lifeline. Without him she'd drift. And she couldn't let that happen. That night, Daniel came upstairs and sat on the edge of the bed. "We need to talk," he said gently. I turned away, pulling the blanket tighter. "Then talk." "I can't give you everything all at once," he admitted. His voice cracked. "It's too much. But if you'll trust me." I rolled over, meeting his eyes, mine wet with frustration. "Trust. You've been lying to me for years. You've built a whole secret life in shadows, and you're asking me for trust." He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. The hurt on his face nearly broke me, but not enough to bridge the canyon between us. So we went to sleep back to back, words unsaid pressing down heavier than the silence itself. Over the next few days, resistance became our rhythm. I busied myself with chores, errands, anything that kept me moving. Daniel threw himself into work, coming home late, carrying the weight of secrets he couldn't drop. Claire waited in the background, a presence felt but not seen. Her silence just another layer of the storm. We weren't fighting, not with words. But the distance between us was a battle all its own. Every glance carried questions. Every silence carried blame. Every moment we didn't speak carved the fracture deeper. And underneath it all, A truth we both knew but couldn't say. Something had to break. When trust has already been cracked, is silence a way of protecting each other? Or is it the quickest path to destroying what's left? Share your thoughts in the comments. The storm rolled in on a Friday night. Thick, dark clouds swallowed the sky, and rain battered the windows in sheets. By the time Daniel suggested we bring Claire to the house, just until the power lines are stable again, my chest was already tight with dread. No, I said immediately. She has her motel. She can't stay there in this weather, Daniel replied firmly. It's not safe. You saw the place. You wouldn't leave a dog there tonight. I hated that he was right. I hated even more that it was me, not him, who eventually opened the door to Claire hours later. Her clothes damp from the downpour, her face pale and tired. Thank you, she whispered, her voice small. I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Come in. The house felt smaller with her in it. She set her bag down by the couch, clearly prepared to sleep there without protest. Daniel brought her a blanket, his movements careful, almost tender. I busied myself in the kitchen, clattering dishes louder than necessary, pretending not to notice how natural it looked, him caring for her. But I noticed. Every second. We ate together, the three of us around the table like some strange, broken family. The storm raged outside, thunder rattling the windows, but the real tension was in the silence between bites. Claire finally broke it, her voice trembling. I know I shouldn't be here. I know I've caused nothing but pain between you two. You're not the problem, Daniel said quickly, too quickly. I set my fork down, my chest aching. She's not the problem. Then what is, Daniel? Because last I checked, it's not the weather tearing us apart. He flinched, and Claire dropped her gaze to her plate. I'm sorry, she whispered. If I could disappear and make this easier, I would. Her words disarmed me. I had expected defensiveness, even defiance. But all I saw was shame. And in that moment, anger faltered, replaced by something softer, something I didn't want to admit. Compassion. When the power finally flickered out, Daniel lit candles around the living room. The three of us sat in their glow, the storm pounding outside. The flickering light softened everything. Faces, voices, walls. Claire pulled her knees to her chest, staring into the flame of the nearest candle. I used to do this when I was little, she said softly. Hide in the dark, pretend the candles could chase away the yelling. I glanced at Daniel. His jaw clenched, his eyes fixed on her, pain etched into every line of his face. I swallowed hard. That must have been terrifying. She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. Daniel was the only thing that made it bearable. He always told me it would be okay. And I believed him. Her words hung in the air, heavy with memory. For the first time, I saw the bond between them not as betrayal, but as survival. Later, when Claire drifted off under the blanket on the couch, I found myself standing in the kitchen with Daniel, the storm still howling. Why didn't you tell me? I whispered, not with anger this time, but with raw exhaustion. Why didn't you trust me with this part of you? His shoulders sagged. Because every time I looked at you, I saw the life I'd built away from that past. With you, I wasn't the boy in the basement. I was a man with a future. I didn't want to stain that with what came before. His honesty cut me open. Tears burned my eyes, but I nodded slowly. I don't need you to be perfect, Daniel. I just need you to be real. For a moment, in the dim candlelight, something fragile passed between us. Truce. Maybe even a thread of hope. That night, we all slept under the same roof. Claire on the couch, Daniel and I in our bed, though not quite touching. The storm raged outside, but inside, the silence was gentler than it had been in weeks. I closed my eyes and let myself imagine, for just a moment, that maybe love could weather this storm too. But deep down, I knew storms have a way of exposing the cracks you try hardest to hide. If you were the wife, would you allow someone like Claire into your home, even for one night, or would the risk to your marriage be too great? Comment your thoughts below. The storm still battered the windows the next morning, though the thunder had softened to a steady roll in the distance. The house smelled of damp towels and burned-out candles. I hadn't slept. None of us had. Claire sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee she hadn't touched. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her hair tangled from a night spent on our couch. Daniel hovered near the counter, restless like a man guarding a door. I stood in the doorway, arms folded. "No more secrets," I said, my voice raw. "Not today." Claire's eyes flicked to Daniel, pleading, but he shook his head. "She deserves to know," he said quietly. Her shoulders sagged, and she nodded, as if surrendering to something inevitable. "It started when we were kids," Claire whispered. "I wasn't his sister by blood. But I may as well have been." My stomach nodded. "My mom dated his dad for a while," she continued. "We lived in the same house. Same dinners, same fights, same everything. For years he was the only constant I had. When my mom left, took off in the middle of the night, his family kept me. Daniel kept me." Her eyes shimmered. "He was my protector." Daniel's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. I sank into a chair, my heart pounding. Not the story I expected. Not an affair. Something far messier. Claire's voice cracked as she continued. "But things weren't good. His dad drank. Blood. He wasn't kind. There were nights we'd hide in the basement, listening to him rage upstairs. Daniel would cover my ears, whispering that it would be okay." Tears slid down her cheeks. "He was the only person who ever made me feel safe." My throat tightened. I glanced at Daniel, who stared at the floor, his fists clenched. "So when I got older," Claire said, "I left. I thought I could make it on my own. But I couldn't. I made mistakes. Bad ones. And every time I fell, Daniel was the one who caught me. He sent money when I couldn't pay rent. When I couldn't eat. When I was too ashamed to ask anyone else." Her gaze dropped to her lap. "He's been saving me for years." Relief, sorrow, jealousy, guilt. All of it collided inside me at once. Relief that she wasn't a mistress. Sorrow for the childhood they'd endured. Jealousy that she had pieces of Daniel I'd never known. "You should have told me," I whispered, my voice breaking. "All this time I thought." "I know," Daniel cut in, his eyes lifting to mine. They were glassy, pained. "I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But how do you explain years of scars? How do you tell your wife about a past you've spent your whole life trying to bury?" The honesty in his voice pierced me. But the hurt lingered. "You buried it with me," I said bitterly. He flinched, as if the words struck him. Claire reached across the table, her thin hand trembling. "Please don't hate him for this. If anyone deserves blame, it's me. I should have stopped asking. But I was desperate. I didn't think, I just leaned on him like I always have. I never meant to come between you." Her voice cracked on the last word, and for the first time, I saw her not as a threat but as a wounded soul clinging to Daniel for survival. Tears blurred my vision. "I don't hate you," I whispered. "But I don't know how to forgive the secrets." Daniel finally spoke, his voice low. "I was scared. Scared that if I told you, you'd see me differently. Not as the man who built this life with you, but as the boy who grew up broken. I didn't want you to carry that pain with me." He looked at me, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. "But in hiding it, I hurt you more than I ever meant to." The room fell silent, the only sound the rain easing outside, as if the storm itself was listening. Something softened inside me, not forgiveness, not yet, but a crack in the wall I'd built. I could see now that the money wasn't about betrayal. It was about loyalty, trauma, promises made in the ashes of a broken childhood. But the wound of secrecy still bled. I stood slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. "I need space," I said quietly. "I need to think. Because right now, I don't know if I can carry both your past and my pain." Daniel's face fell, but he nodded. "Take the time you need. We'll wait. I'll explain everything. Anything when you're ready." Claire lowered her gaze, guilt etched deep. And I walked upstairs, my heart heavier than ever, but carrying a fragile new truth. If your partner revealed a painful past they'd hidden for years, not out of betrayal but shame, would you feel compassion first or anger? Leave your thoughts in the comments. The rain stopped the next morning. The world outside sparkled, washed clean, though inside me everything still felt heavy. I stood at the kitchen sink, staring out at the dripping trees, when I heard soft footsteps behind me. Daniel didn't say anything at first. He just set a mug of coffee on the counter beside me, cream and sugar just the way I liked it. "I thought you could use it," he said quietly. I glanced at the mug, then at him. For the first time in weeks, there was no defense in his eyes, no tension in his shoulders. Just openness. "Thanks," I murmured, taking it in both hands. The warmth seeped into my palms. It was a small gesture, but small things matter when the big ones have broken you. Later that day, when Claire offered to rest at the motel again, Daniel suggested we drive her. I agreed, though my chest tightened at the thought of sitting in the car with both of them. But the drive was surprisingly gentle. The countryside glistened after the storm, fields shining under patches of sunlight. Claire sat quietly in the back, gazing out the window, while Daniel and I rode in silence that wasn't sharp but soft. Halfway there, Daniel pointed to a roadside diner. "Remember our first date?" he asked, a faint smile tugging at his lips. I blinked. "You mean when you ordered a burger the size of your head and tried to impress me by finishing it?" He chuckled, the sound low and warm. "And you stole half my fries." I couldn't help but smile, the memory breaking through the heaviness. Claire glanced at us in the rearview mirror and gave a small, bittersweet smile of her own. At the motel, Claire hesitated before going inside. "Thank you," she said softly. "Both of you. For letting me stay, for listening, for not giving up on him." I studied her face, the fragility, the quiet gratitude, and for the first time I didn't see her as a rival. I saw her as someone who had survived hell and still carried its ashes on her skin. "Take care of yourself," I said, and meant it. Her eyes shimmered as she nodded and disappeared inside. When Daniel and I got back in the car, the silence between us wasn't awkward. It was companionable. Something had shifted. That evening, Daniel suggested making dinner together. We hadn't cooked side by side in weeks. At first, I hesitated, but then I found myself chopping onions while he stirred sauce at the stove. We worked in rhythm, our movements familiar, almost instinctive. He brushed past me to reach for a pan, his hand grazing mine. My heart stuttered, but I didn't pull away. At the table, he raised his glass of water. "To second chances," he said softly. I met his gaze, searching for insincerity. But all I found was hope. I lifted my glass. "To second chances." The clink of glass against glass sounded like a promise. Later, after dishes were washed and the house had grown quiet, I found Daniel on the back porch, staring at the stars. I hesitated, then stepped outside, wrapping a sweater tighter around me. He glanced over, his face illuminated by moonlight. "Couldn't sleep." I shook my head. "Too many thoughts." He patted the space beside him. "Sit with me." I sank onto the bench. For a long while we just sat in silence, breathing in the cool night air. Finally he said, "I know I can't erase what I've done. But I can spend the rest of my life proving that I'll never keep secrets from you again." I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "You can't change the past, Daniel. But maybe you can change what comes next." He turned, eyes glistening. "That's all I want. With you. Always with you." The sincerity in his voice melted something inside me. I leaned against him, resting my head on his shoulder. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was closeness. And for now that was enough. That night, for the first time in weeks, we fell asleep in each other's arms. His breathing steady, his warmth pressed against me. It felt like the world had steadied, even if just for a fleeting moment. For the first time I let myself believe that maybe, Just maybe love could survive even this. Do you believe couples can truly rebuild trust once it's been broken? Or do some cracks never fully heal? Share your thoughts below. For 2 days things felt lighter. Not healed, not whole, but lighter. Daniel and I moved more easily around each other, sharing laughter at small things, lingering longer in the same room. It was fragile, like glass balanced on the edge of a table. But I wanted to believe we were finding our way back. Until the phone call. It was evening when Daniel's phone buzzed on the counter. He was in the shower. Normally I wouldn't look. But the name glowing on the screen froze me in place. Claire. And beneath it, the preview of the message. I don't know what I'd do without you. Please don't leave me. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. My chest tightened, breath catching. After everything, the confessions, the promises, this? When Daniel came downstairs, towel slung around his neck, I was holding his phone in my trembling hand. What is this? My voice cracked loud, raw. His eyes widened. You weren't supposed to see that. Rage surged through me. You weren't supposed to get messages like this. He reached for the phone, but I pulled it back. Don't you dare touch me until you explain. It's not what you think, he said quickly, his voice desperate. Oh, don't you dare say that. Tears streamed down my face, hot and uncontrollable. That's all I've heard for weeks. Not what it looks like. Not what it seems. I am drowning in your half-truths, Daniel. Drowning. He stepped forward, pleading. She's scared. She thinks she's losing me. That's all that message meant. I shook my head violently. No, Daniel. That's not all. You let her lean on you so much she doesn't know how to breathe without you. And where does that leave me? Where does that leave us? His face twisted with pain. I didn't mean for it to happen this way. I was just trying to protect her. And in protecting her, you destroyed me, I whispered. As if fate wanted to drive the knife deeper, a knock came at the door. Claire's voice, muffled but clear, called out. Daniel? I'm sorry, can we talk? My blood turned to fire. I threw the phone at his chest and stepped back. Perfect. Is here. Let her in. Maybe the two of you can figure out how to survive without me. Daniel's face crumpled. Please don't do this. Don't say that. But the sound of the door opening, Claire's timid footsteps in the hall, made my decision burn hotter. Claire appeared in the living room, eyes wide at the sight of my tear-streaked face. Sorry. I didn't mean to. Didn't mean to what? I snapped, my voice breaking. Didn't mean to take my husband's heart. Didn't mean to lean on him so hard that I barely recognize him anymore. Her face crumpled, tears filling her eyes. I never wanted to hurt you. He's all I have. I turned to Daniel, my hands trembling. And what am I? Placeholder. The woman who cooks dinner while you run to rescue her. His voice cracked. You're my wife. My love. My everything. Claire is my past. You are my future. But the words, though desperate, felt hollow in the weight of my fury. I don't believe you, I whispered, my chest heaving. Not anymore. You've built your whole life on secrets, Daniel. Maybe you love me. Maybe you don't. But I can't live like this. I can't compete with a ghost you refuse to let go of. Silence. Thick, choking silence. Claire wept quietly. Daniel stood frozen, broken. And I grabbed my keys, my purse, and fled into the night, the door slamming behind me. I drove without direction, rain beginning again, streaking the windshield. My sobs came in waves, blurring the road. I pulled over on a quiet street, pressing my forehead to the steering wheel. How had it come to this? I had loved him with everything in me. I had believed in him, defended him, begged for his honesty. And still he let me shatter. In that moment, I truly wondered if our love had been real, or just an illusion I had clung to while he gave his heart to someone else. It was the lowest point of my life. And I didn't know if there was any way back. When trust breaks again and again, would you walk away for good, or fight one last time to save what's left? Share your heart in the comments. The house lights glowed faintly in the distance behind me, but I didn't drive back. Not yet. Instead, I sat in my car on the empty street, engine off, rain pattering gently on the roof. The world was still, except for the chaos inside me. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. Over and over, I replayed the message on his phone. Claire's timid knock, Daniel's desperate eyes. Every piece of it felt like a knife. I wanted to scream. I wanted to sleep for a year. I wanted my husband back, the man who had once made me believe love was safe. But was that man still real? Or had I built him out of illusions? I thought about the vows we'd made. For better or worse, richer or poorer, in sickness and in health. I thought about the nights we'd stayed up laughing until we couldn't breathe, the mornings he kissed me before work, the small ways he showed love without words. And I thought about the lies, the secrets, the silence that had eroded everything. My heart warred with itself. Pride whispered, walk away. Save yourself before he destroys you again. But love whispered louder, stay. He's broken, but so are you, and maybe together you can be whole. I pressed my face into my hands and wept, torn between the two voices. Back at the house, Daniel sat in the living room, Claire gone upstairs to give him space. The silence was unbearable. He stared at the front door, willing it to open, praying he would hear the sound of my keys, my footsteps. But the house stayed still. He buried his face in his hands. You're losing her, the thought echoed relentlessly. The one person you can't lose. Memories flooded him, our wedding day, my smile when he first called me his wife, the way I defended him even when I didn't have the full truth. He thought of Claire too, her message, her desperation. She didn't mean harm, but she had become a tether to his past. He hadn't been brave enough to cut. And it was destroying his present. Daniel stood abruptly, pacing the room. For the first time he knew what he had to do, choose. Not half measures. Not trying to protect both worlds. One choice. His marriage or his past. And if he chose wrong he would lose everything. While I sat in the car, drenched in confusion, Daniel pulled open the drawer of the coffee table and took out an old photo. Him and Claire as children, barely 10, their faces too old for their years. He stared at it, tears burning his eyes. I kept you safe back then, he whispered, voice shaking. But now I'm losing the woman who gave me a future. And if I lose her, I'll never forgive myself. At the same moment, I whispered into the silence of my car. I can't keep living in his shadows. I need him to choose me. Just me. We were miles apart emotionally, yet our pain mirrored each other's. Both waiting. Both breaking. Both desperate for the other to reach first. Eventually I started the car. My heart pounded as the engine hummed. I didn't know where I was going. Back to him or away forever. But my hands turned the wheel toward home. When I pulled into the driveway, I sat frozen for several minutes, staring at the house, at the lights still on in the living room. Fear gripped me. Pride told me to leave. But love pushed me out of the car. Inside, Daniel stood when I entered. His face etched with hope and terror. I didn't think you'd come back, he whispered. I almost didn't, I admitted, my voice trembling. I don't know if I can trust you again, Daniel. I don't know if I can survive another secret. He stepped closer, not reaching for me, but standing raw and vulnerable. Then let me prove it to you. I'll cut every tie, lay every truth bare, do whatever it takes. I don't want a life with half of me hidden. I want you, all of you, and I want to give you all of me. Tears filled my eyes. And Claire. His jaw tightened, pain flickering across his face. I'll always care for her. But I can't let her hold me anymore. Not if it means losing you. I'll help her find her own life, her own healing. But my place is here, with you. I stood there, heart thundering, staring at the man I loved, the man who had broken me, the man who now begged for one more chance. Could walk away. Could protect myself. Or I could leap into the terrifying unknown of forgiveness. Slowly, my hand lifted, trembling, and rested against his chest. I felt the steady thrum of his heart beneath my palm. His eyes closed, a tear sliding down his cheek. I don't know if I can forgive you tonight, I whispered. But I'm willing to try. His hand covered mine, warm and certain. That's all I need. For the first time in weeks, hope stirred in my chest. Fragile, trembling, but real. If you were in her shoes, would you take the leap of faith and try again, or would you protect yourself by walking away? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. The morning after I chose to stay felt different. The house, though quiet, seemed lighter, as if even the walls sensed a shift. Daniel moved carefully around me, as though afraid one wrong step would send me fleeing again. But I wasn't running anymore. I was watching, waiting, measuring his words against his actions. And for the first time he seemed ready to be measured. That evening, after dinner, he took my hand across the table. I called Claire, he said, voice steady. My heart clenched. And I told her things had to change. That I couldn't keep being her lifeline. That if she wanted to heal, she had to build her own life, without leaning on me. I searched his eyes for hesitation, for guilt, for the shadow of another lie. But there was only resolve. She cried, he admitted. But she understood. More than I expected. She said she wanted me to fight for you. That she'd rather step back than watch me lose you. Tears pricked my eyes. For the first time, I didn't feel like Claire's enemy. I felt like she and I wanted the same thing. For Daniel to live free of secrets. 2 days later, Claire came to the house. I braced myself for tension, but she arrived with a small duffel bag and an almost serene expression. I found a women's support group, she said, her voice soft but clear. They're helping me look for steady work and I think it's time I stand on my own. I studied her face. The fragility was still there, but so was something new, determination. She turned to me, eyes glistening. Thank you for giving him back to me in a way. And for letting me step aside so you can have him fully. Emotion caught in my throat. I nodded, unable to speak. When she hugged Daniel goodbye, it wasn't possessive. It was sibling-like, protective but released. And for the first time, I believed her presence in our lives wasn't a threat. When she left, the house felt clean, cleansed of shadows. But healing wasn't instant. Some nights I still woke with questions buzzing in my mind, doubts gnawing at me. Daniel never ran from them. If I asked, he answered. If I cried, he held me. If I doubted, he reassured me with patience instead of defensiveness. And slowly, trust began to sprout again, fragile as new grass after a fire. One night, weeks later, I found him in the garage, sorting through old boxes. What are you doing? I asked, leaning on the doorway. He held up a dusty photo album. I want you to see all of it. Every piece of my past. No more hiding. We sat on the floor together, flipping through photos. Some sweet, some painful. His childhood scars were written in those images, but so was his resilience. And sharing them with me felt like stitching shut a wound that had bled too long. It was on our anniversary months later that Daniel surprised me. We drove out to the same roadside diner where we'd had our first date. He ordered the ridiculous burger again, and I stole half his fries. We laughed until tears slid down my cheeks. The kind of laughter that comes only after surviving storms together. Then, outside in the parking lot under the glow of the neon sign, he took my hands. I don't deserve another vow, he said softly. But I want to make one anyway. Not in a church, not in front of anyone else, just here with you. The truth, the whole truth for the rest of my life. No secrets, no shadows. Just us. My throat tightened. Then I'll make one too. I promise to listen, even when the truth hurts. I promise to fight for us, not against us. We sealed it not with grand ceremony, but with a kiss that tasted like forgiveness and new beginnings. As we drove home, headlights cutting through the night, I thought of the moment when I had first read those bank statements, when suspicion had been a blade to my heart. But tonight, Daniel reached across the console, lacing his fingers with mine. And instead of a blade, his hand felt like an anchor. The same discovery that had once torn us apart. His secret connection to Claire now stood as the reason we had found a deeper kind of love. Tested love. Real love. Weeks later, on a quiet Sunday morning, I stood at the window watching Daniel in the garden. He was bent over, planting new seedlings, dirt staining his hands. He looked up, caught me watching, and smiled. A smile not of a man hiding, but of a man seen and accepted. And for the first time in a long time I felt not just like his wife, but like his partner. The storms had come. The house had nearly collapsed. But love had weathered it. We had weathered it.
Thank you for staying with us until the very end of this video, and I'm confident you enjoyed it. We've got plenty more exciting and heartwarming stories waiting for you. Just click on the image on your screen to watch the next one.